Hi, my name is Annie Chang. I play Detective Sophie Song on Peacemaker. This is Pop Culture with Pat. And don't be a fork and subscribe.
Hey guys, welcome back to Pop Culture with Pat. Really excited for today's episode. We got a special guest on the show, as you can see. Today, we're going to be talking to Annie Chang. She plays Sophie on Peacemaker, which is currently streaming on HBO Max. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, Annie.
Yeah, thanks, Pat. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Really excited to talk to you. But first, before we get into, the Peacemaker talk, and just a heads up, guys, it will have, some spoilers in here. So if you guys aren't caught up in the latest Peacemaker episode, which if you haven't watched it yet, definitely go watch that now. But it will have spoilers. So just a heads up. But before we get into that, Annie, I always ask my guests, first time on the show, kind of how did you, get started off? What was the inspiration for you to get into acting in the first place?
Yeah. I think a lot of actors are always they always say like, "Oh, I've known since I came out of the womb," and they're like, "I was born to act." I was not like that. I was pretty academic growing up. I used to like to dance as a kid, and then I remember my mom sent me to like a ballet camp, and I thought, "Oh, I don't know, this is fun, but like it's really intense," and so I was like, okay, maybe not that. And then in high school, I joined the musicals because I missed dancing. And then I realized that nobody should ever listen to me sing. So thank God the intro to Peacemaker was dancing and not singing a song. And then I was like, okay, well, if we take the singing out, then I guess maybe acting. So yeah, it was something where for college I applied to a few acting schools, what I thought were best. I definitely wanted a degree because I'd been very academic. And then I applied to, like a bunch of Ivy Leagues, good schools. And the deal that I made with my mom was that she would let me go to one of the acting schools if I got in. But if I didn't get into one of those, then it was over and done. And I would, I don't know, find something much more responsible to do with my life. And then I got into school and then here I am. And even now, sometimes I'm like, is this really did I grow up and this is what I'm doing? Like, am I still waiting to
Yeah,
grow up and then do something responsible?
mind you. Yeah, no, I totally get that. So that's funny that and I'm actually going to ask you about that as far as the intro scene. Well, actually, you know what? We'll go ahead and we'll ask you about that because that that opening sequence must be, for me, it's like one of the greatest things as far as like an opening for a TV show I think that I've ever seen. Just absolutely hilarious. So it's interesting that so you had the dancing like background, so that that's interesting. How did that whole thing come about, and how long did it take you guys to do that? Because I imagine you guys, like, obviously in the intro you guys are all straight faced, no laughing or anything, but I feel like there had to be a couple times where you guys cracked up laughing filming that thing.
you know, First of all, I want to say that I didn't know that that was what the intro was going to be. Like, I don't think anyone knew. And then suddenly, just like part way through shooting, I remember getting an email that was like, "Hey, you have a dance rehearsal. Can we schedule?" And I was like, "Do you mean a fight rehearsal? Like, is there a fight? I could see that happening here." And they were like, "No, a dance rehearsal." And I was like, because yes, Pat, I used to dance, but that was like many lifetimes ago. Okay. So I was kind of like, nobody asked me if I know how to dance. How do you just know I can dance? What kind of dance? What are we doing? And I remember the next day on set, everybody was like, "We're dancing. What are we dancing?" And so it was very like, what's happening? It was so wild. I think we did it all. I mean, we all rehearsed sort of separately, and then we had one day where I think we rehearsed it together, and then we shot it in a day, and it was there was a lot of laughing and a lot of breaking, and but it was just the weirdest thing, and everybody was just on board. They were like, "You want us to dance? Great. Where? Tell me and I'll do it now." I also think it's like, spoiler alert, now that you know after this last episode of them all becoming butterflies, I think what's fun is that as the show goes along, everyone's now having an interpretation about what maybe is the meaning of the dance sequence or why it's happening. And whether they're right or not, I have no idea. You can only go to James's brain for that.
Yeah.
Um, but it was insanely fun.
Oh yeah, no, it looks like I just the first time watching the show and just seeing the intro, and like in a way, I'm not really surprised because it is James Gunn and
Right.
he just does all kinds of crazy things, with his films, with his, and stuff like that. So, but I was just like, this is absolutely amazing. So I was just like, there had to be some really fun stories behind, behind doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I have fantasies of like, what if the cast got together and made a music video, you know?
That.
um,
You guys need to do that. That would have been hilarious if there was like a full, like, because I know, I mean, you basically have like the full song there, but I would love to see another one done because
right,
this one came out so well. Now,
right.
as far as just getting like this role, I guess, how did the role of as Peacemaker come about, and what were your initial conversations, with James Gunn or the other writers or anything on the show? What did that kind of look like once you initially got the role?
Yeah, it came my way just like everything else. It just came through, my agents, and they really didn't have a lot of information on it, because I think they were really, protecting it. So all I knew was it's James Gunn. And I was kind of like, well, that's all I need to know. I'm interested, And so, but it's always hard when they don't give you a script and just the scenes, because then you're kind of trying to figure out like, okay, but what's going on and who is this person and what am I doing? So you just kind of make it up. At least for me, I'm just like, okay, I'm just gonna make it up by what I think it is. And it's we were already in COVID at that point, so everybody now who's an actor, all the auditions you just film yourself at home, on your iPhone or whatever, and send it off. So and then you don't really think about it because you didn't meet anyone, you didn't work with them. It's a really weird thing, to just
Yeah.
keep sending this off. So I didn't think a lot about it, and then I also figured it's a James Gunn show, so I'm sure there's a lot of people going for it and whatever. And then I remember they gave me an additional scene to do for like a callback tape. So I was like, oh, okay. So I recorded some additional stuff for the callbacks. And then I remember them saying, uh, spoiler alert, they were like, this scene, she's an alien. And I was like, wait, what? And I was like, what do you mean she's an alien? There was no other instruction. And I was like, well, what does that mean? And I was like, okay, I'm just gonna do it. I don't know. And then I had a final callback on Zoom with James and a bunch of the team, the producers and whatnot, and worked with him for a while on it. And then I found out I got it, and then I flew to Canada so to shoot it. So yeah.
Wow, talk about, so I'm kind of surprised because I feel like with with a lot of shows, especially like the superhero genre, a lot of times they can be pretty close to the chest, safeguarded. So I'm kind of surprised that they, and again, spoilers, guys, but they gave you that. I mean, granted, at the time you didn't really have any context to it, but they told you that the character was an alien. I'm kind of
Right.
surprised that they threw that out there so early. So you knew pretty early on that that was going to happen with your character.
I wasn't sure because when I had the callback, maybe people were coming back and doing really weird things. Because I think when I had the callback, James was like, just forget about that. And I was like, oh, so I'm not an alien. Okay, I'm just a person. And he was like, well, technically this butterfly like is in your brain now. And like, but just, and I was like, what? And he
You're
was
just
like,
like,
and I think he could tell that I was like, what are you talking about? What do you want me to do with this information? So he was like, so just forget about it. Just be a person. And I was like, okay, great.
okay, sounds good. I'll go with whatever you tell me to do.
Right.
That's hilarious. So did you, because I know sometimes, actors will do this. Did you come up with a backstory at all for, for Sophie? And like, what her life was kind of like up to the point before, she's joins the show with Peacemaker?
Yeah. Yes and no. The thing is like when I was younger, and like first coming out of acting school, I used to really do that. I would like have all these notes about the backstory. And the truth is, for me, I can't say this for all actors, but just for the way that I like to work, and especially I think for TV, um, sometimes some of that work is impactful to the performance, and sometimes it's not. And so I think, so while I have some ideas of that, mostly what I wanted to work on was feeling free and easy and having fun while I was doing it. I'm sure when you watch movies or when you watch TV, it's so clear when an actor's like having fun and then you just like it because you can tell they're having like a ball, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've also seen performances where you're like, I don't know if this is working for me. And also, I'm not even sure if this actor is like having fun, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think some of that was relevant, but so much of the story is not really about where she comes from, but I think what she believes here and now. Like, I think one of the most powerful things to me about her is that she could totally just leave Augie in jail. I mean, he sucks. He's
Yeah.
terrible.
Yeah.
She could just leave him in jail. And then she doesn't. And I was like, what led her there is not as important to me as why do I feel that way now? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think there were a lot of things that I focused on that were more about what's happening right now, as opposed to like 10 years ago or when she was a child or anything like that.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. Like I said, yeah, I know it's different for everybody. Like, yeah, some people
Yeah.
like to create the backstories, but in this case, just kind of let things happen and more in the moment of of what's like kind of going on. So that makes sense. And this isn't the first time that you've played a character that's been like in the law enforcement field. Did how did like your previous roles, did they have any effect of how you approached the character of Sophie for Peacemaker?
It's funny because I did a show called Shades of Blue on NBC. I don't know how long ago now, but with Jennifer Lopez and Ray Liotta, and I played like a young detective, a young FBI agent. And but I actually, for that part, I didn't have any sort of real gun training or like law enforcement training. Um and that character was very sort of like trying to prove herself and new and whatever. And in a funny way, I think Sophie is like, if that character had continued being in law enforcement, maybe she'd be Sophie 10 years later, you know? Yeah. I think what was really nice about this part is that they did give me a good amount of training with a gun. I never fired a gun or done anything before this show, not in life, not in a show. And so I also had some training about like, if you're running after someone or you're trying to chase someone, like there's a way to do that. Or if you're coming across a door to open it or to, clear a room, there's a certain way to do that. So it was nice to have all that training because then it really supported feeling like I was a different person or someone who actually knew what they were doing. Right.
Yeah. No, so
Yeah.
that must have been so you got pretty much like a quick training of what it kind of is to be like like an officer. So that must have been exciting.
Yeah, it was. And we had someone on set who, if we were shooting something, he would come over and say, okay, but like if you were really doing this, like if it was your job, you probably wouldn't do it that way. You would do it this way, and it was so nice having that there because obviously I don't have any law enforcement training.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I was given so many tools here to help me, which was really nice.
Yeah, and that's always nice to have that, that point of reference. So yeah, because like you said, you've never done this before. So to have someone who's actually there and be like, oh yeah, like what you're doing is great, but you just might want to, throw this in there to, add to it or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, in this episode, so I like I said, I couldn't believe I was like, oh man, I'm so glad that I get to talk to her now that this episode, came out because what an episode for you. You end up getting taken over by a butterfly. And in the show, like it looks like it's quite the painful process. It's not something that's just like quick and done. So what was it like, shooting that whole sequence, the butterfly going inside you and having to react to that? What was it like shooting
Yeah.
that whole thing?
It's so funny because I think before this show, I had never worked on anything that required a lot of visual effects afterwards. You know what I mean? I had really never done anything sort of action packed and superhero-y and anything like that. So first of all, I will tell you, it was very hot because we shot episode 6 weirdly at the end of our shoot time. So it was June already. It was like summer. Yeah. So I have my down coat and then I have the police vest over my turtleneck. And so I remember, first of all, just being like really sweaty the whole time. Um, uh, the blood is very thick. So it's, the way that they did it was I was on the ground and they would pour it in my mouth. And then I would have to try to cough it up as high as I could, which sometimes I was like, well, I'm actually choking. I need a sec. Um, but yeah, I remember we had no idea what the butterflies look like. We had no idea if they were big or if they were small or what. And so they had something that was just made out of like little pipe cleaners. And they were like, it's like this size, just imagine. I was like, okay. And I think James was just like, just imagine that you're like trying to grab a big butterfly by its wings and like trying to pull something out that's climbing down your throat. And I was like, okay, and you just go with it.
Yeah.
But it's a very odd thing because you're like, well, nothing's there. And what am I reaching for? I don't even know what it looks like. And
Yeah.
so it was really cool for me to get to see it too, to be like, oh, that's what it is.
Yeah. I was gonna say because I know there's definitely a good amount of like visual effects and they all look fantastic. But as an actor, when you're doing this stuff, a lot of times, yeah, you're reacting to nothing. Or I was gonna ask you if there was any kind of like reference because I know a lot of times they'll do like a tennis ball or something crazy like that. So in this case, they had like little thing that you mentioned as far as like the pipe cleaners or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. And they would just be like, here he is, and there were other scenes that we've done where they're like, and now he's flying over. And I was like, okay.
That,
Yeah,
that's
it's all very silly and fun.
now, and as far as the butterfly takeover scene, so towards the end of the episode, that I mean, so many amazing things just about that particular scene. I mean, like the music. I mean, Gunn is fantastic as far as just like his musical choices, but like just the way that whole thing played out, and like not gonna lie, like I got chills watching that moment of the episode and like immediately had to go back. I was like, I need to watch the scene again, just with everything that was happening. So can you just kind of break down, I guess, like filming, because there was a lot of visual effects like there too, obviously. So can you break down filming that whole sequence?
Yeah, yeah. I just want to say real fast though, regarding the music. When I got this job and I got all the scripts and I read it and I was like, oh, this is very funny, but like also very dark. And I was like trying to like imagine sort of tonally what it was. And then he sent us the playlist. And then I listened to it and read it and I was like, oh, got it. I got it now. I think that his usage of music is genius. But that being said, yes, that whole sequence of like going into the police headquarters and everybody, we definitely shot it in sections. But it was just the funniest day of everybody walking around and everyone's just covered in blood, hanging out. But I know that the timing of it was very tricky, and because no one knew really what the butterflies looked like or how they, he would describe it, but it was sometimes you'd have to redo the shot just because someone didn't open their mouth wide enough because they were like, well, if you're just opening it a little bit, we can't really, do the effect of it going in. So there were so many little things that day that I'm like shocked that we pulled it off. But they definitely did it and broke it up in lots of little sections because it was, there was just so much happening.
Now, as far as because I always find it like interesting when you have those kind of badass moments where you have like a particular character where they're doing like the kind of like the slow-mo walk, you're just like coming through as like an actor. I don't know if you've had a chance to kind of, you said this is kind of like your first time doing like a sci-fi actiony kind of thing. Is it like awkward to kind of do that, like that badass kind of walk, or is that something like, how did that come into play?
Pat, I have to tell you, it is what I think all actors dream of. I think I tweeted this today, but I never in a million years, while I enjoy this genre very much, I never thought that someone would see me as being able to do it or cast me in that. I don't feel particularly badass. I remember when I told my parents that I got this part, and my dad was like, "What are you playing?" And I said, "I'm playing a cop." And he laughed and he was like, "If I was in trouble, the last person I'd want showing up is you." I was like, "Thank you, Dad." So
Appreciate that.
yeah, I was like, appreciate that. So I it all happens obviously in real time. And
Yeah.
what was really cool is that James, he's really good at like hyping actors up. So he would blast the song. So when you have the song, it's easy to be like, yeah, I'm cool and I'm badass. You know, if you're just walking in silence with fans blowing, you're like, okay, this is weird, you know? Or that final march where everyone's, joining the group and they're going down the hall with the ridiculous faces. He would play that song that is actually in the show because it's so much easier to just feel it when you also have music, And so I think he was really smart in always having things for us to stimulate the actors.
Yeah, I was gonna say playing like the music, I could see that definitely putting you, getting you like in the, the mood, the
The
atmosphere.
mood, yeah.
So that definitely makes it a lot easier. But yeah, I mean, that you just walking through like the hallways, all the butterflies coming through and stuff. And then yeah, when you when you guys are leaving and all of the other new butterflies are trying to like smile. Some of them came out pretty creepy. It's like, I mean, that's the point, I know, but it's just like you're looking at them, they're kind of, smiling all weird and everything. So, but yeah, that scene was amazing. So I mean,
Yeah.
congratulations to you and the rest of the crew, like on that.
Yeah. It's funny because I think everybody was pretty good about not breaking, but like that scene that I do with just Fitzgibbon, played by Lachlan, a wonderful human being, where I do a really weird smile. I remember it was very quiet. We were doing the scene. James and everybody else is in like a little room where we can't see them watching on the monitors, And I remember I did the smile and I just hear him like cackling. And then I started laughing and I'm like, I can't hold it together once someone else, I'll never be the first person to laugh. But once someone else laughs, then I'm dead.
Permission.
Yeah, I'm like, I can't do it. Yeah, we had so much fun. I think that day when we were walking down the hallway, all doing our weird smiles, I think that was the last shoot date
Oh,
for
okay.
me. That was like the end. And it was maybe, I don't think it was for the show, but for me, that was my last day. And I remember because we shot everything in the kind of a weird order and it was like such a good day to just end it on.
Yeah, and speaking of, Fitz and, Lachlan, you guys obviously work together on the show, quite a bit. And so what was it like, working with him? I mean, you guys have a great, chemistry on the show. Was that something like when you guys met, did you just feel you had that natural, chemistry like right away, or, how did that
Yeah.
work?
Well, first of all, what's really nice about working with Lachlan is he's been doing this forever. Like, if you look at his, it's so funny because every time I like go on social media and say something about him or just look through, everyone's like, hey, isn't he the guy from this movie? Hey, isn't he the guy from this TV show? Like, he's literally worked on everything, okay,
Oh, yeah.
forever. So he's so experienced that it's so easy to work with him. He's so like, he's just going to come and do a great job. That being said, I think that the first day I met him and the first scene we were shooting together was the scene where he and I show up at Augie's house, where I call him a fork, and they already have a good rapport. And I was kind of like, okay, like I'm going to try to really just like be friends with him as quickly as possible so that we have, but then the moment I met him, he's so warm and friendly. He's like the guy where when he shows up to work, everybody's smiling. He puts everybody in a good mood, you know? Um, and I think that rapport came very naturally for us. A lot thanks to him. So I couldn't have asked for a better person to have spent like most of the show with. Um,
Yeah. As I
yeah,
said, that always makes it easier. I feel like when you have, some working with someone like that who's, so experienced, but they're so open and willing to, work with, with something like that. So I feel
yeah,
like that makes it a lot easier too.
yeah. The worst thing is when you get something and the person you're in all the scenes with, you don't like him at all.
Yeah, you're just like,
And then you're like, oh man, okay,
all right,
I
well,
really got to act.
yeah, this is gonna be a long shoot. And
Right.
I have to also ask you about working with Robert Patrick like as well, because I mean, obviously he's a horrible character on the show, but you guys like your back and forth that you have, with your characters is great. So I mean, and again, he's another, actor who's done a ton of stuff. So, what was it like working with him like as well?
Yeah, he's very kind and sweet in real life. Real funny, real nice guy, but man, once the cameras start rolling, he is scary, And I remember that first day I was like, "Whoa." he is scary. And I was like, I'm not supposed to be scared of you. So I have to actually act because I was like, I, Annie, am scared of you. I was like, but Sophie is not. So now the acting is I'm not scared of you. Um, uh, I mean, he also talk about like just veterans
Yeah.
of of what they do. He is so um I don't know, so present in just at this moment, that it's so fun to work with him because there's always this feeling of like you're not totally sure what's going to happen. He's very surprising and but yeah, it's not hard to feel his presence because he as a person has a lot of presence,
That's
um
cool though. So once, I mean, yeah, and you can like kind of, I could totally see that. So like once the cameras are done shooting, though, sounds like he's just like a fantastic guy. Like
yeah, he's a cool guy. He's super cool.
that's awesome. And as far as for you, obviously can't speak to like the last like two episodes to where we haven't seen those yet. But for you, I guess like, or you could just be kind of general. But what's your favorite episode from the season, and what's your favorite Sophie moment?
Oh, okay. I think, obviously, I'm biased. My favorite episode is episode 6 because I had a lot of fun doing it. But also, I think it's kind of like we plant all these problems, right, in the show.
Oh,
Augie is a problem and his, white supremacy stuff. And then we also know the butterflies are a problem. And then Judo Master comes along and he's a problem. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
I think episode 6 is really where it's like, well,
In the
all the
fan.
problems are now, like coming to a head. And so I think it's an exciting episode for that reason. But also it's, yeah, Sophie goes through this big change. So that was really fun for me to work on. Um, I think uh I have a couple of favorite moments. One is at the end. So all I can say is
Coming up.
it's coming up. Yeah. But
Okay.
I would say the other is probably I mean, I know we already said this, but getting to be badass in this episode, I think that what's been really exciting in sort of the superhero universes, I think, is if you think about superhero shows or movies or whatever 20, 30 years ago, um there wasn't as much diversity. I think there was a certain look to it, and I think I just never thought that I would get to have an opportunity to be badass or be a villain, if any. You know what I mean? I was like, wait, I'm a bad guy? Like, that's so fun, so I think getting to transition into that is just something I never thought I would be offered and get an opportunity to do. So to have that has been like an enormous gift.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say it must have been really cool. Like so watching this episode, I did not expect that to happen at all. So when you go around the corner and the butterfly, gets out, I didn't think you were going to get possessed, by one of these things. So I was like, oh no, I was like, oh, but then you get to, turn into, this like villain character. So that must have been really fun getting to, play, Sophie, but then get to transition and, play like the leader of the butterflies now. So you're almost getting to play two different characters in the same
Right.
show. So that must have been a blast.
Yeah, yeah. And it's funny because it's like uh the way that James had described the butterflies to me, because I was kind of like, so do I have the memories of this person, or do I, I was very confused like what the rules were around it.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, I mean, he was like, I don't think you should think of it as you're an alien. It's just you're inside of another person's body. And this person still knows all the things that Sophie would know and can like access Sophie's past, just like how Myrn, once you realize he's a butterfly, right? He's like, this was a bad guy, like he can see. And he was like, so you have all of that there, but you also now have a complete like different addition of brain and knowledge and experience. And I was like, okay, so it's this weird thing of like, it's a little still Sophie, but it's not at the same time,
Yeah.
which is super fun.
And we've kind of throughout like the interview we've kind of talked about a little bit working with James Gunn, but I love with him big fan of his. I mean, love Guardians of the Galaxy. The past like Suicide Squad. This. I mean, he's done a bunch of stuff, but I love that you never really know what to. I mean, I guess the one thing that you can say you can expect is like a lot of just crazy shit to happen in his movies. So I love that he's not afraid to take chances. So I guess just overall, what has been your experience, working with a director like him, and just how does James Gunn, stand out, for you personally?
Yeah, he is really an actor's director. So, as a director, you're having to pay attention to so many things, the way it's lit and the way the shot is set up and all these other million things. And I think some directors are just great at working with actors, and they know how to phrase things to make actors feel comfortable, because I think your best performance is going to come from when you're feeling comfortable and confident, not if you're feeling like pressured and scared, right? So he knows how to make, I think, us feel comfortable, and how to talk to us in a way that gets the right performance out, you know. I would hear him say to many different actors on set, he would say something like, you don't have to show me anything, just think it. I actually think when I had a call back with him, because I was kind of like, am I an alien? Am I not an alien? He asked me to do it once where he was like, just think about it and then talk. Don't show me what you're thinking. But you just think it and talk. And I was like, oh, okay. That's like amazing actor speak, right? Whereas some directors give you a note and you're like, well, I don't know what to do with
Yeah,
that. Also, it helps that he's just a really cool guy. He's super down to earth. If you ever look at his social media, he's like, he answers people's questions all the time. He interacts with fans. Like, I'm like, I don't know how this guy has so much time to do everything. But the warmth that he has online is the same warmth that he has as a person.
so that, yeah, I mean, that must be so nice, like what you said. I saw it was actually I think it was today, or maybe it was like late last night, that he had posted on I think I saw it at least on Twitter, just a story about with John Cena playing the piano and like involving like his James's like dog, and how he wanted to incorporate that, into like the story. And I was just like, wow, I was like, wow, now going back to watch that episode, now I just have a whole new appreciation for that little scene. And it's just like the level of detail that he puts into like all of his characters. It doesn't matter how big, how small they are. Like that, for me, it's just something you're watching, you can just like tell, watching it as an audience member, how much detail goes into those things.
Yeah, no character is wasted. I think that uh, I mean, you're absolutely right. Every detail is so, it's not an accident. It's not a mistake when it's with him, or a happy accident. I think it's very intentional, and you might not know what the intention was, but you can tell that it was thought out, you
Yeah.
know. Um
So it's
yeah,
like that
such a,
little thing, I was like, wow, just hearing him like talk about that, and it's like just because it wasn't a big part of the episode. It was like, I don't know, like a minute and 30 seconds or something like that. But just
yeah.
hearing that little story makes you, appreciate it and go back and rewatch it with like a whole new perspective. And this, you said this is your first, foray really into like the superhero, genre, just like overall. So, what has this whole experience been like for you? And, just compared to, I guess, like some of your other projects that you've worked on up to your career in this point.
Yeah, I'll have to be totally honest with you. Before doing this show, I really, well, before doing this show, and honestly now, I would not say that I am like the most well-versed person on DC related things or Marvel related things. It's just when I think about comics that I had as a kid, I actually, weirdly enough, had Archie comics. Like that, those were the only comic books that I had,
Right.
which is funny because Lachlan is on Riverdale, right? Which is
Yep.
based on the. So anyway, it all comes full circle. Uh, so it wasn't something that I knew a lot about. And I think getting, like I said before, getting to work in a different genre has been really fun. But now that the show is out, I think what's really cool about it is that comic fans are like the coolest fans. They really are. First of all, they're so knowledgeable. Like sometimes they say things to me and I'm like, I don't know what that is. And I feel bad, but they're so knowledgeable and they're so responsive, and they really want to have like, they really have questions and want to talk about it and want to analyze things. Or I saw something the other day where somebody was like, hey, did anyone notice that the dance moves in the opening sequence are like space invader bodies? Like, because the little space invaders also like make this little shape. And I was like, did Carissa have that in mind when she choreographed it? And then, you know what I mean? Like things
Very
I didn't even
possible.
think about. And now I'm like, was that the inspiration? Because that's genius if it was.
Yeah.
So weirdly enough, I think what I've learned is that like comic fans are the best.
Oh yeah.
And it's been
Super.
fun to interact, yeah, with everybody about it.
Super passionate, and I'm sure, I mean, throughout the whole show, but especially I'm sure after the most recent episode, I'm sure you've probably gotten a lot of people outreaching you and just wanting to talk about that and learn more about just you as like an actor too. So that must be a lot of fun.
It's a lot of fun and it's also a little scary
Yeah.
because I'm naturally very introverted. So sometimes I'm like, I don't know what to say,
Yeah,
Um,
that's fair.
but but overall, 99% of people messaging me or reaching out to me have just been like really lovely, fun, nerdy people. I think I'm very nerdy, you know what I mean? So I feel at home just like chatting with everyone about it and listening to people's interpretations of what's going on. But yes, it has been overwhelming. I was not really a social media person before this. Like if you look at my Instagram, it's 99% just pictures of my dog. Um, so
Okay.
now that I'm like, oh, now people actually like want to talk to me about something, I should be nice and respond to everybody. Um, it's been fun.
Well, that's great that everyone has been nice and supportive. That's always
Yeah.
obviously important. As far as I know, obviously, you can't, say too much, just where the episodes haven't come out. But without giving any spoilers, what can fans expect, I guess, in these final, few episodes? If you just want to, I don't know, 3 words, or if you want to just say be as vague as possible, but what can fans expect?
Uh, twists and turns,
Okay,
I'll
so
say.
even more twist, and I feel like it's so crazy because going into the show, because I love the Suicide Squad that he did, and Peacemaker was in that.
So good. Yeah.
And I heard, I was like, oh, like they're doing like a spinoff. I was like, well, this is going to be interesting. And the show, started off and it was kind of, starts off a little bit, smaller scale. And I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. Like a smaller, story. And just like as the story is unfolding and like week after week, I'm like, oh, that was my favorite episode. No, this is my favorite episode actually in the series. And you guys are just finding a way to top yourselves, like each week. So if you're saying more twists and turns, I can't wait to see what's going to happen in the next
Yeah.
two episodes for sure.
Yeah. Shit's gonna get crazy.
To wrap things up, Annie, as far as is there anything else that you want to say to the fans, and where can, well, that you can speak of, as far as like where can they catch you next, and as far as like where can they follow you, like social media wise?
Yeah, to fans, I'll say thank you for being so supportive of the show and for watching. Um, uh, uh, my Twitter and my Instagram are the same. It's a very boring handle. I'm going to warn you now. It's literally just it's Annie Chang. That's my handle, which is always funny because when I tell people that, they'll be like, "What's your handle?" And I'll say, "It's Annie Chang." And they're like, "No, no, not your name, your handle." And I'm like, it's Annie Chang. And then it's very confusing for a while. But yeah, it's Annie Chang. And what's really fun is that when when the last episode comes out, the week after that is the premiere of a show called Super Pumped that I'm in on Showtime, which is about sort of the rise and fall of one of the founders of Uber, of Travis Kalanick. So it's pretty crazy. Pretty much everyone in the show is playing a real person that exists, which is also insane. So it's very different from Peacemaker, but
Yeah.
I do think it's going to be a fantastic show. So if that's of any interest to you, I would definitely check that out as well.
Yeah, no, I actually looked up the trailer for that, and it looks like it definitely will be like it gives me a little bit of the Social Network, gives me like a little
Yes.
bit of those kind of vibes. And
Yeah.
I love that film, so I can't wait to check that out. So talk about timing. So it comes out, you said, the week after like Peacemaker, right?
Yeah, so February 27th is the day that it'll premiere, I think. And it's the same creators as Billions. I don't know if you ever watched Billions, but which is a very loved show. So it's going to be epic in a very different way from Peacemaker. No aliens, I can
Yep.
promise you that. But it's going to be it's a pretty epic show, and it's based on a book that's also called Super Pumped, that was written by a journalist named Mike Isaac, who really just details a lot of the crazy true things that happened there. So yeah, so it'll be good too.
That's awesome. That's super exciting. Well, hey, Annie, thank you so much. Like I said, it was great to get you on the show and just to talk all things Peacemaker and nerd out with you a little bit. So really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule and coming on here.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. Thank you for being so lovely to talk to. Hi, my name is Annie Chang. I play Detective Sophie Song on Peacemaker. This is Pop Culture with Pat. And don't be a fork and subscribe.